Welcome to this latest episode of Canonically Speaking. Today we're on location at the Church of the Holy Family and St Ninian in Kirkintilloch, a town in East Dunbartonshire in Scotland, a few miles to the northeast of Glasgow. The church itself is a fine red sandstone edifice built at the end of the 19th century and designed by the famous firm of architects Pugin and Pugin. My guest today is the parish priest, Canon Gerard Tartaglia, who originally hails from Glasgow's East End and who was ordained for the Archdiocese of Glasgow in 1985. For most of that time, the time since then, he's been actively engaged in canon law in one way or another, and since May 2025, he's held the role of President of the Canon Law Society of Great Britain and Ireland. So welcome to the podcast today, Canon Tartaglia, and to begin the conversation, I thought it might be of interest for you to give a bit of detail, first of all, concerning how it was you came to be a priest.
Thanks, Paul, for having me on your podcast. Well, I came to be a priest because I suppose my family background was one that made it possible. I suppose the idea of priesthood was something that I had always considered. My older brother, Philip, was in the seminary, and it was a very natural thing to consider priesthood. And when I felt inspired to respond to that, I was accepted to the minor seminary at St Vincent's College, Langbank, and then the minor seminary at St Mary's College, Blair's, and then major seminary at the Pontifical Scots College in Rome and the Gregorian University for studies.
How old were you at the time when you started?
When I went to the minor seminary, I was 13. I was what would be called second year in school terms in Scotland. And I remained in the minor seminary until I was 18, and then went to Rome and was ordained when I was 24 years of age.
And that was in 1985?
Yes, that's correct.
And what sort of roles have you held since then?
Well, after I finished my JCL at the Gregorian, I returned to the Archdiocese of Glasgow and I was an assistant priest in a large inner city parish, Holy Cross, Cross Hill. Wonderful place. But after 3 years there, I began to work on the lowliest of rungs at the Scottish National Tribunal. And I suppose I started to learn real canon law. I started to practice, as it were, canon law when I went there. And that would be in 1989.
And you've been on the tribunal ever since?
Yes, I have been. I was the Vice Judicial Vicar for a number of years, and then the Judicial Vicar at the Scottish National Tribunal. And then I was appointed parish priest at St Margaret's, Clydebank, and then latterly here at Holy Family and St Ninian's in Kirkintilloch with St Flannan's parish and St John of the Cross parish, as it happens. But that's maybe for another day.
All about to be merged.
Well, that's right, yes. And I have to say, with considerable acquiescence on the part of parishioners, they've been very good about it. And so the new parish will be Holy Family Parish on the 1st of April.
Now, looking back over these years, these more than 4 decades, are there any particular memories that you hold dear in any way, or any events that you look back upon with special fondness?
Yes, I suppose that would be the case. There are a number of such events. My initial start in the parish in Holy Cross in Cross Hill was really a wonderful time. There were 3 other priests on the staff, and there were a couple of religious communities in the parish, and there was huge participation by parishioners, and it was a really thriving and buzzing parish, and that was a really good start, I think. And then going to work at the tribunal, the Scottish National Tribunal, John Cunningham, who'd be known to some certainly later Bishop Cunningham. He was the judicial vicar and he was extremely accommodating and encouraging in that time. And in fact, I have to say, the people that I've worked with in tribunals over the years have been really the best of people. In fact, I think that's something that's not really spoken about much in the canon law world, is how decent people are in helping each other and supporting each other in studies and in practice. And it's a real credit to the whole canon law field and canon law world, I think.
So in all these years you've been working in the marriage tribunal, what notable differences would you say you've observed?
I think one of the very obvious differences is that fewer people are getting married and fewer people are approaching the tribunal for a decision. People are making their own arrangements, as it were, and perhaps in some way that reflects the breakdown in the sense of obligation and responsibility that people feel to one another, and the sense of community that existed, and the rise of individualism. I think possibly that's led to the idea that people can just make their own arrangements and that they don't need the assistance of the church in helping them to live their lives, that instead they see things as purely private and personal and are not really too bothered what anyone else thinks. Of course, that's not entirely the case, because there are still plenty of people who are committed to their faith and who are keen for a decision from a tribunal in order that they can pursue their faith and sacramental life as closely and as faithfully as possible. But I think we can see that there has been a diminution in the regard for marriage and different attitudes towards second and third and fourth marriages.
Now, on your curriculum vitae, it also mentions that you work in Oslo. What kind of work do you do there?
Well, I've been assisting at the Oslo Tribunal for the last number of years, trying to help them and encourage them in their tribunal work. And it's been very fruitful and it's very enjoyable. It's a wonderful team that they have there at the Oslo Tribunal. And I feel that I've been able to help them and guide them in some ways. Certainly, the bishop was very grateful for my willingness to participate, and I'm happy to keep doing that for as long as the bishop wants it. It's a very fruitful ministry and very enjoyable as well.
You talk about the number of cases going down in Scotland. What about Norway? Are there still cases coming in?
There certainly are, and in fact, the number of cases in Norway has increased quite markedly, not least since Mitis Judex Schism, because there are so many Catholic immigrants to Norway that the possibility of having a decision more locally, because the petitioners live in Norway, this has opened up the tribunal process to them.
So just to clarify, Mitis Judex, what was the main thrust of that?
Well, so the element that particularly changed was to do with the competence, who was competent to hear marriage nullity petitions, and the place of the petitioner, the residence of the petitioner, became an important and available reason for a tribunal being able to accept a case, whereas before it was much more limited in the sense that it was usually the place of the respondent or the place where the marriage took place. And for immigrants, that tended to mean another country far away that they had left. And now they have access to the local tribunal.
So you're still kept busy there then?
Certainly are. The tribunal there is a busy place.
Now, earlier on you mentioned your brother Philip, God rest him. He died during COVID, I believe, didn't he? Yes, he did. Now, at one point, of course, he was your Archbishop. What is it like to have your brother as your Archbishop?
Yes, it's a bit of a shock at first. And the question of obedience is an interesting one because sometimes he would ask me to consider certain things and I would just say, no, leave me alone. Because, I was with him, you'd be with him at lunch or something like that, and he would say, oh, what about this or what about that? And you'd say, oh, leave me alone, stop it, Philip. It's, you don't want me to do that, and I'm not interested either. But to be fair, it was very good. In fact, it was very easy. We sort of very quickly adopted a distance in relation to the governance of the diocese. You would think, oh, he would tell me everything, but no, that's not what happened. And he knew that it's not that I wasn't interested, but he knew I didn't want to participate in that. And he had his own advisors, very good advisors, so he didn't need me muddying the waters. Although he used to say things to me like, canon lawyers, you can't get a clear answer from any of them. Oh, no one wants to commit themselves to anything. So, right, well.
Yeah, it was very tragic that we lost him in those circumstances. We'll pray for his soul, it gets his reward in heaven. And back to your own situation, apart from working on the tribunal, you've had various roles in teaching.
Yes.
What kind of things have you done in that regard?
So, yes, I taught canon law in the major seminary in Glasgow, the Inter-Diocesan seminary to Chester's, which is where the major seminary was in Glasgow, and then the Scottish National Seminary, which was on the same site. And that course was part of, the canon law part was part of the STB, which was given through Pontifical University at Maynooth. So that was very enjoyable. I enjoyed that very much, teaching the students the standard canon law course that you would receive in the midst of your STB. I also taught canon law, or tutored really, with the diaconal programme, which existed and still exists in Scotland. I did that for a number of years. And also I was director of the Jurisprudential and sentence writing course of the Canon Law Society of Great Britain and Ireland, and I still tutor on that.
Yeah, can you explain what that is?
Yes.
What it's for?
It's really aimed at people who have JCL or people who have worked in tribunals for a long time or who are adept in marriage tribunal work, and tribunals are either trying to get those individuals into a position where they're confident as judges and as sentence writers, or where they're hoping to apply for a dispensation from studies from the Signatura Apostolica. And this would be participating in this would be part of the studies that they had done in order to ask for the dispensation. And on the course, we tackle almost all the grounds, and we have cases that the students study and then write sentences, and then they're tutored all the way through in terms of the material that's presented and then in terms of the sentence that they write.
So the dispensation you're talking about is from having a license in canon law.
Yes.
And how ready or unready is the Apostolic Signatura to grant that?
I think if people have a decent CV in terms of experience of tribunal work, perhaps taking evidence or acting as advocates, they have participated in tribunals for a time, and then on top of that, they have participated in formation courses and studies, and then they add to their CV something like this jurisprudential and sentence writing course. It becomes quite a good, strong CV that possibly allows the Signatura to say, okay, you can be dispensed for a number of years and act as an associate judge on a tribunal. But the other thing it does, though, is it helps those who have a JCL to take the step so that where they give decisions and they account for their decisions in a coherent way. And I think that gives people confidence when they're on a tribunal and perhaps maybe later as single judges to give their answer and to stand by what they've said, or at least to argue their point and to listen to others.
What sort of numbers are you training for this?
So it varies from year to year, but it can be as many. Well, we don't usually take more than 12 on the course at one time, but usually we'll work with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It varies from year to year how many people apply to go on to the jurisprudential and sentence writing course, but we don't tend to take more than 12 because it's too much for the tutor each week. There's a different tutor each week, so it's an 8-week course, so spread over 2 years.
But it's still going strong.
It's going strong. I was in Derry a few weeks ago, and there was a wonderful group of people from different backgrounds. 2 priests, 2 deacons, and 2 laywomen were the cohort this time, and excellent students who wrote sentences that any tribunal would have been very pleased to receive.
Well, it sounds a wonderful work that you're doing. Now, of course, added to your own CV, as from last year, is the fact that you were elected to be the president of the Canon Law Society of Great Britain and Ireland, which I'm sure you regard as a great honour. And what does it involve in terms of time and commitment and responsibilities?
Yeah, well, I think just getting into it, to be honest. But in terms of time and responsibilities, I think one of the major responsibilities is to promote canon law and to promote the society, the Canon Law Society of Great Britain and Ireland, and to do that by doing a podcast like this, of course, but also by representing the society at different events. So not long ago we had the Linwood Lecture in London, which is a biannual lecture that is shared with the Ecclesiastical Law Society on different aspects of ecclesiastical.
The Ecclesiastical Law Society, the Anglican.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, sorry, yeah, of course, that's the Anglican.
So it's a joint venture.
Yes,
each year they do.
Every 2 years, and we choose a different topic, and we've asked someone to come and discuss it with us, and that's just an example of. I go along and I represent the society at that, and then at the conferences of the Canadian Canon Law Society and the Canon Law Society of America and the Canon Law Society of Australia and New Zealand, we have close links with them, and we try to maintain those links by the president or perhaps someone else going along to the conferences and being present and sharing the good wishes of our own society with them, but also encouraging them to participate in the life of our society. And I must say, that's a very pleasant task.
So do you have any hopes or any vision, would you say, for the Canon Law Society, where you want it to go or how you want it to develop?
Well, I would like to see the membership grow, because I think it's a very worthwhile society to belong to. And so making knowledge of membership something more visible and more attainable, I think that would be something I would like to try and do. At the same time, it's a society of canon lawyers and people who are studying canon law and practicing canon law. So it's not just a free-for-all. But on the other hand, I think there are many who could benefit from the society and its publications and its conferences and its camaraderie as well, and that support that comes from being amongst other canonists, and which encourages you in your own study and your own confidence, really, in practicing canon law. So I would like to try and develop that a little if I can.
Well, we wish you all the best in that task and in your task of looking after 3 churches and working on 2 tribunals and all the other things you have to do. And thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure listening to you and speaking to you, and hopefully we can talk again before too long. So until then, goodbye and God bless.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you again to my guest today, Canon Gerard Tartaglia, and thank you to Emma Settiardi for her rendition of C.P. Bach's Solfeggetto, which opens and closes this podcast. I'm Fr Paul Hayward, and you've been listening to Canonically Speaking. Please be sure to subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts for more interesting conversations from the world of canon law. Until the next time, thank you and God bless.